Hello, and thank you for tuning into this video about priming yourself for maintaining great habits. You could apply any of this to any objectives, but throughout this video, I'm going to apply it to the example of health. Why? Because as the old Indian proverb says, a healthy person has 1,000 wishes, but a sick person only has one. Great health has to be the bedrock of any other goals you might have in life, because whatever you create in terms of wealth, success, or even beautiful relationships, without your health, they'll be no good to you. Whereas if you have amazing energy, the sky's the limit. Whether you have a habit of unwinding with a glass of wine and a couple of bags of crisps every night, or you only drink herb tea after 7 p.m., or the first thing you do every morning is check your social media versus getting up and moving in natural daylight, think of it this way. You're already a genius at habit formation. We get better at whatever it is we're doing habitually because we create neural pathways in our brains and the behavior becomes automatic. And our bodies, as well as our minds, become habituated to certain habits. So, for example, if you snack on and off all day, your body will be primed to release too much insulin. So once you've decided on a habit you want to introduce, the first and most obvious rule is repetition. Just keep doing it. You may be thinking, that's easy to say, but much harder to do. And of course, that's true. But there are scientifically proven ways of supporting yourself to stick to new habits. Firstly, we're going to look at your physiology. Science shows that when you're tired, which in these studies means when you've had less than 6 hours of sleep a night, any willpower challenge is more difficult, including, for example, exercise or making healthy food choices. Sleeping for 7 to 8 hours will help you to do the habits you've decided you want to do and not do those things you know are bad for you. Likewise with meditation. If you meditate for as little as 10 minutes a day, you'll be priming yourself for maintaining all the habits you want to be doing. The reason for this is that both meditation and sufficient sleep increase the size and connectivity of your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, and enable it to do its job properly, control impulses, find motivation, remember core values and long-term goals. And they weaken your reptilian brain, which is responsible for impulsive behavior, which is going to undermine your best laid plans. Regular exercise has a similar effect to sufficient sleep and meditation, and so does avoiding insulin spikes. And by the way, one of the best ways to do that is to do time-restricted eating. So if you can find enough inspiration, motivation, and willpower to start any of these habits, it doesn't have to be all of them, then they'll soon give you much more willpower than they require to keep doing them. The next place to look after physiology is self-compassion. When you fall off the wagon, which you will because you're human, you might think that feeling bad, whether that's regret, guilt, anger with yourself, or shame, would be helpful in leveraging yourself to improve. But science shows that the opposite is true. It turns out that it's better to forgive yourself for your mistakes and wipe the slate clean to prevent future relapses. A study of dieters who were taught to recognize that they might be feeling guilty when they didn't stick to their plan, to put it into perspective and then let themselves off the hook, versus a control group, showed that the harder you are on yourself when you fail to keep to your desired habit, the more likely you are to have the same failure again, and the bigger it will be if you do. So, not beating yourself up when you've made a mistake is not being soft, it's being smart. The third area I'm going to look at is the concept of future self. In my program, 7 Habits for a Vibrant Life, I use a future self exercise in which I invite you to summon up in your mind's eye yourself in 20 or 30 years' time. The idea is to make the future self more real and identify with them more, because studies show that if you feel closer to your future self, you'll take actions now to take care of them. For example, keep your muscles strong to prevent future falls or weakness. This is the case whether you imagine them in positive or negative realities, but it may surprise you to know that it's more powerful if you imagine them in a negative scenario. It surprised me. Until I knew this, I'd always put my attention exclusively on ideal future scenarios. But by vividly imagining the future, if you don't make the change in habits that you know would be good for you, you'll be even more likely to succeed. So doing both is the way to go. The next strategy for priming yourself for maintaining a habit is in a similar vein. Anticipate failing to do it. Women in a study who were asked about the biggest obstacle to their exercise goal, when and where that was likely to occur, what they could do in advance to prevent it, and what they would do to get back on the wagon afterwards, were almost twice as successful in maintaining their exercise habit compared to the ones who were simply asked about the goal and looked at it positively. One final technique, which is particularly apt for a time-restricted eating habit, is known as surfing the urge. In the case of time-restricted eating, the urge to eat in your fasting window. This involves a mindfulness technique in which, rather than giving in to an urge to eat, you give the urge, including any physical discomfort, your full attention. Trust that you can tolerate these sensations. Breathe. Imagine the craving as a wave and wait with patience until it passes. The findings suggest that mindfulness techniques change your response to the urge and make resisting temptation easier. So, if you want to maximize your chances of success when you start a new habit, you want to be priming your physiology for success by sleeping well, meditating, exercising, and avoiding insulin spikes. You want to forgive yourself when you have a setback, make friends with your future self, anticipate failure and how you'll deal with it, and learn to surf the urge when you face temptation. Is there a tiny habit you can put into your routine today to get you closer to where you want to be? Starting small is key. Getting to bed just 10 minutes earlier, for example, could make the difference, or a 2-minute meditation habit. Alternatively, you could write a letter from your future self. If you want some help with any of this, or you use these techniques and they work for you, do reach out and let me know. I'd love to hear from you.